Welcome back. Let's Talk Tuesday.
Welcome back.
Exciting to be here, and welcome to our new studio.
That's right. We have new digs, if you can see, which is basically our living room.
Our front living room.
That's right.
What we're going to call
so fancy.
Look, people have formal living rooms. We have a studio.
A studio. Okay. That's what we'll call it when you guys come visit. We'll say, welcome to our studio.
That actually seems weird.
Yeah. Sit on the couch. We can talk.
Yeah, we are excited. Kurt and Denette here with Broken for Better. And
Yes.
We just have these conversations on Tuesdays, and we want marriage to be real and authentic, and we want to do life together. And so we welcome you for joining us in our conversation.
Yeah.
So we're in the Breaking Chains series,
Yes,
coming to a
we
close, actually.
are. Only
We
a couple more
few more left.
Yes.
But this one tonight is breaking boundaries.
Breaking boundaries. What kind of boundaries are we looking at breaking? Last week was habits. This week, so it's kind of sounds similar, no?
No, it's not similar. This one I want to take out of the John 17, and I want to do, how are we in the world, but not of it? How are we in the world, but not of it? And we'll talk about that in the context of marriage, but I kind of want to set that up first because a lot of people that know our story know that, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, but, you know, I was in the world and of the world.
Yes, you were.
Okay. Well,
yes, he was.
Yes, I was. Okay. I'm glad that you agree with me.
But by the grace of Jesus.
So I was
here.
in the world and of the world. But when we came up together, you lived a completely different type of life than I did. Your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, they were really different. People that knew that you were, you were what people would call like white.
I was a wifey for lifey. Yeah.
So when I was like, oh, I'm going to marry her, right?
Right.
I think to myself, okay, man, she is it. But when all of us know that we're not perfect, and we all know that, hey, we got these things. So when you think about being in the world and not of it, what did that mean to you as you were growing up as like a teenager, early 20s?
Well, I think so. It's a kind of crazy thought process for me, because when I was growing up as, a young girl, my family, my parents gave their lives to Christ, after I was in the picture. So we kind of had just a crazy testimony with all that I kind of witnessed as a kid and what I walked through, just watching my parents come to Christ. And so here I was, a young girl watching my parents kind of struggle with a dual life, like what they did on the weekends and then what they did at church. And so I think watching that, this like self-righteousness was birthed in me looking back. Like, I don't think it wasn't intentional. Like, I don't think I looked and said, oh, I want to be self-righteous. But I think like as a teenager, I was so guarded by what I wanted to be a part of or what I wanted to allow or what the environments I'd put myself into. So what ended up happening was I was really self-righteous. Like I was like, it was black and white. There was no gray. Like if you were either this or you were that, there was no in between. And so, which is crazy because then along comes you in high school and I fall in love with you and you did really, lead a crazy life at the time. But up until that point, I was so black and white with who I would encounter, what was crazy was I would love you and I'd want you to know Jesus, but I didn't have time for there was no grace. There was like zero grace. And that's awful to say, but it's true. Like it's truth. So yeah, I don't know.
Do you take that a little bit, just pull on that thread just a little bit. Would you say like the group that you hung around, and I'm not putting anybody on blast at all.
Yeah.
But was it a collective, like Christianese spiritual group that was the context of everybody in your group? Like there's the worldly people and then there's us?
I don't think it was intentional. I think, you know, I was like, seriously, this is going to sound so crazy, but I was like the kid that did like the 4-month course of EE, which if you didn't grow up in church world, that was evangelism explosion.
I grew up in church world, and I don't know what the heck that was.
Know. Yeah, so like I knew
Is
like
that like
all
Awana's on steroids?
No, but it was like 12 points of like salvation, like how to lead someone to Christ, how to share your faith, all these things. And so like I was serious.
So that was like
about
the first AA group.
No.
They both have 12 points. No.
Okay. It was, well, no. So we would like as a young teenager, you know, so I did that, you know, this training or whatever, so that when we'd go on mission trips, but what we would do, there was a group of people that I still to this day run with some of them. So that's really funny to think about. But we would like by ourselves go to the park and find people to talk to and share we were like the people, you know, like the TikTok when it's like, has anyone told you about our Lord Jesus Savior? And the people are running away from them. Like that was us. Like we were.
Okay. So I'm just hearing like this. We were married almost 26 years. Please tell me you had a bullhorn.
No, I wasn't yelling
that
at
would have been
people.
awesome.
I was still loving on people. But what was so crazy was I think there was this mentality that like I had to live like a separate life. Like I felt like I was set apart, which isn't a bad thing unless you become like indignant about it and self-righteous. And I don't even think it was purposeful, but it was this line, you know. So some things it was good because there would be people that were, you know, would ask me or invite me to certain things. And I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not about that. Like I had no fear kind of telling people where I stood, but it also was really self-righteous. Like I know that looking back because it just wasn't filled with grace and love.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think, you know, when we talk about, you know, the breaking boundaries, you would almost say your boundaries were so high and so fortified that there was no grace in those boundaries.
Yeah.
Because I was the other side where my boundaries were so low and so minimal that there were no defining lines. You know, I think when I was being of the world and in the world, I was in it and of it, you know, there was no line to me of where is this healthy for me versus where is this not. Everything was run full steam ahead until you get hurt. And then, that was a bad call. Go somewhere else. Do something else. You get caught in something, you get in trouble for something, you know, you get busted for something, you get suspended from school, all of these kind of things, right? It was just run, no boundaries. Man, I'm in it and I'm of it and I'm loving it. You know, when I give my heart to the Lord, now all of a sudden, I think I found myself the other way. I fortified those walls so high.
Yeah.
Because what I knew was, that was all the stuff that I used to do. And so I can't do any of that. So if you listened to like music that was secular, and you remember,
yeah.
I would let you have it. And Lord, don't let me find out.
So you came over to my side, the lack of grace side.
Like you're all proud of that.
I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it. I'm
well, we'll say that's good. That's way better than you coming over to my side.
Probably. I don't know.
But what I found myself was, and I remember these conversations that I had was like, you had a glass of wine? Not you, but if someone told me like you have a glass of wine.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Now you came over to my side. No. It's like, I remember I would almost cut even relationship with you.
Yeah.
I couldn't even have you in my sphere because, I used to do that really unhealthy.
Yeah.
And you do that, I want you nowhere near me.
Which is so unlike how Jesus loved. Like we see the scriptures are filled with him doing what? Loving the sinner. Like that's why the I can't think of the word. The Sadducees and the Pharisees, thank you. That's why they kept on him so bad, was because he was, living this life that was so raw to them, and they didn't get it. They didn't get it. So I have a question for you. Thinking back, because I know for those that maybe are listening that don't know your story, you didn't give your life fully to Christ until years into our marriage. And I'm so thankful that like our boys were young enough that I don't think they remember too much of that, Kurt. And I always like to say that I've been married once or married twice to the same man, 2 different times, but to the same man. So when you think about, you say you were in the world and of the world, and then you fall in love with a girl that, was trying to pursue Christ, even though maybe I was like totally not filled with grace and like all those things. But when you fall in love with me, did you come, because we talk to couples all the time that come into marriages with very different expectations, very different backgrounds, very different testimonies. Maybe one has a crazy testimony. Maybe one kind of grew up in the church or whatever. Both testimonies are beautiful. They're just different.
Yeah.
So when you came into our marriage, did you feel like things would change or your boundaries would change, or was that something you didn't really even give a thought to very much?
I was ready to have sex.
Okay.
So I think I was happy that there was about to be no boundaries.
Oh, in that department. But you weren't worried about any other boundaries.
Else. We went 3 years waiting for that night. So yeah.
Before we got married, guys, not after we got married. I'm just clarifying. I didn't make you wait after we got married.
We ought to try that marriage technique on couples. Let's say get married and then
Let's
wait
see
to
how
have
long
sex
you
for
can
3
wait.
years. How
didn't.
long you can wait?
We didn't do that.
No. I think there was. I kind of went in thinking there were no boundaries. Like everything was permissible. Let's do this.
As long as it's in the bedroom. So we'll just take everything to the bedroom.
It's like that's what I kind of felt like, that I'm about to get married, so now I'm good. But I was so lost that I didn't think about things that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
Things that would be hurtful. I didn't think about those things.
Right.
Again, when you look at boundaries and you think about breaking boundaries are there for protection. They're there for our safety.
Yeah. And
so when you look at this kind of stuff, when you think about boundaries in your marriage, or when you don't have boundaries in your marriage, you have to take a different, yes, if I had looked at all the times and gone, wow, these rules that are in place, man, they really piss me off.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's selfish. And so, yeah, the boundaries now is a hindrance to my selfish lifestyle.
Yeah.
In marriage, we have to have boundaries. But we can't, we got to be in this world. But I think what we do as married couples is we think, okay, we're in this world. Well, hey, the Joneses, they do it, and it works for the Millers, and it works for the Smiths. Like, they all do that, so we should be able to do that. And when we're in this world but not of it, there's going to be certain things that your friends do,
right,
that are not good for your marriage.
Yeah.
Like, it's not most beneficial.
Yeah.
That's why we spend a lot of time in premarital talking about some very hard topics and some rough topics, because what you don't want to do is come in with everything is sunshine and rainbows, and then night 3 you realize, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Like, I want to have these conversations before we get that far. And so, I say, man, what are the boundaries? But then what are some boundaries that have been created that need to come down?
Yeah. For me growing up, and like I said, I definitely struggled with like ridiculous boundaries. Like, I just didn't have much grace. I, wanted to surround myself with, certain people, and I know now, especially now, man, like everyone, the only way you're ever going to be able to talk with anyone or have impact on anyone is to show someone love, right? To show someone love. But then stepping into marriage, talking about it from the marriage aspect, I went with all of these rigid rules that I had grown up with. And all of a sudden, a ring goes on my finger, and I'm supposed, you did put a ring on it, but all of a sudden, you're saying no to sex, you're saying no to all these things, you're saying no, and all of a sudden there's this ring on your finger, you say I do, and you're supposed to just like have an amazing intimate life with that's so difficult, because the church as a whole, Big C church, we don't talk a lot about healthy intimacy, healthy sex life, healthy boundaries when it comes to the bedroom, all of those things. And I know for another place, we'll definitely talk more about sex, but I think it's great.
Right now, every dude.
It was like, keep talking.
Every dude just triggered when they heard healthy sex life, and they just want to know what that is. And so, can we just clarify that? I mean, that's like it should be 10 to 12 times a week.
Dear
right?
Lord, no,
is that not healthy?
No.
That's okay. My bad. we got
people in the room are like, what in the
all
world?
The ladies in here
like,
drop their.
But it is crazy. It's crazy that like all of a sudden these things you've been told, don't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. This is too far. This is too far. All of a sudden, okay, now you're free. Wait, what? So there's all of these things you have to work through in your brain that like, no, what did God create? What did he make beautiful? What did he picture when he created couples, And so even that was crazy for me. It was really crazy to just go from 0 to 60 or whatever,
Yeah.
like,
and I mean, I can go back to that night we left our wedding immediately, like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
The chocolate gators, because we didn't eat dinner, and it was like, man, we just got to the room and we're exhausted, right?
We were exhausted. We had taken the food. No, we didn't eat like anything at a reception because we didn't do a great job of like protecting ourselves in that moment. So we had like barely anything to eat, and we were totally dancing and had fun with all the people that were there. Get to the room, we're starving, and you had tried to be all romantic and had chocolate covered strawberries and all these things. I was like, I'm just hungry.
Yeah.
I just need to eat. Can we just eat them? Like, I know I'm supposed to probably eat these really like nice and sexy. I just need to eat them. Like, I'm so hungry. Like, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out if I don't devour these strawberries right now.
I wouldn't even go there, but it was nice.
No, I did. I went there. Yeah, it was awful, but it was okay.
I think it's interesting though on the boundaries part of things.
Yeah.
Because it gets and I think this is where you just brought it up as, a girl who grew up in the church, and all of a sudden in one moment of time, every boundary that you had is now supposed to come crashing down. And I think there's the same part of that when you have your marriage and the people you hang out with or how you interact with this world. You get saved and we throw up these high walls.
Yeah.
So where yours are supposed to come in crashing down, and it doesn't, like, it's weird because this whole new change of thought, change of life, change of everything.
Yeah.
There's the flip side of that too, of going, wow, I just built these walls so tall, right? And when you look at a marriage ministry like what we're trying to do and come alongside, I don't think by and large the world has a great marriage representation of what does marriage look like. What does a healthy marriage look like?
Yeah.
What does tension look like? Look, nobody knows how to fight in marriage. Nobody knows how to communicate in marriage because they didn't see it growing up. All they saw were the beavers, right, on there, and they did everything perfect.
The beavers?
So is it? Yeah.
That's what we're going to go with. That's the beavers.
Wait, is that not a show?
I don't know. That's an interesting name. That's an interesting last name.
Leave It to Beaver?
Oh, Leave It to Beavers. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay. You just said Leave It to Beavers.
Leave It to Beavers. Wait,
okay.
What was the name of the show?
God,
okay, sorry.
Hey.
Gotcha.
Right here.
Back on.
I think we're back on. I think
on track.
we have these misaligned views of what marriage is.
Yeah.
And then this staggering statistic of how many marriages are falling apart. In a Bible that says, be in the world, but not of it.
Not of it, right.
But what we've done in our marriages, our only examples are the things that we see.
Yeah. So
we watch trash TV. We watch, these reality shows of what marriages are supposed to look like, 90 Day
Fiance.
We watch these things, and now these become our norm. And I'm going to tell you from the guy's point of view, a guy grows up from his teenage years, right? And so many men have pornography issues. Well, this fantasized life of what's not real becomes their real. And now their boundaries and what boundaries are in marriage are totally distorted.
Yeah.
It's not real life.
Well, and what's crazy too is like thinking about the boundaries that I had to shatter when it came to like, giving myself to my husband, and all of those things because I'd been told all of this, all of these things were wrong. And all of a sudden I had to totally do a 180 and switch my thought life when it came to, or, my thoughts when it came to that. We sit with so many couples that, maybe have a lot of baggage that they bring into their story. You had baggage that you had brought into our marriage. I had baggage too, but we had very different types of baggage. But you think about the couples that their boundaries are, I'm going to get all my fun out. Bachelorette parties, the bachelor party, I'm going to get all my fun out now because all of a sudden all these boundaries are being put in place. But it's like, it's so crazy. That's the exact opposite thought. And that thought process is so wild to me because you're like, I'm going to be uniting my life with the person that I'm supposed to be living the most sacrificially for, dying to self. And so I'm going to start that relationship by making sure I can get all my fun in while I got it. It's like those boundaries, all of a sudden you think, when I put this ring on, the boundaries have to be in place. But it's like setting yourself up for failure because you're literally expecting to, like, you're looking at your marriage as taking away instead of giving to you. Like, instead of giving you something, it's like, what am I going to lose? If that makes sense. And so it's a powerful thought when you go into a relationship to say, man, what am I gaining by joining my life with this person instead of what am I giving up?
But you are dying to self to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And so the concept is, yeah, you're right. You're dying to self, but what you're gaining is so much more.
Yeah.
When I think about just this concept of what formulates in the boundaries of our marriage, what do you think, in honesty, what do you think was the biggest area in my life where I had no boundary, and so it created potential problems? I was in it and of it.
Yeah, when we were first married, definitely, like, I think the sexual history you had coming into it, that was really hard because of porn, because of those things that you brought into our marriage. And we've had this discussion so many times, but I think that definitely was the hardest thing for me to walk hand in hand with you through. Like, because not only was I trying to encourage you, obviously, to have healthy boundaries, those boundaries that if stepped over, they hurt me. Like, they were super, super hard.
Okay. So, I asked that question for a very specific purpose. So I'm glad you just said what you did. So there's the area of my life where I don't have a boundary. Mm-hmm. So now you're in my world.
You mean then?
Yeah.
You have boundaries.
I definitely mean then.
Okay.
But in that moment,
yeah.
Okay, you're not about that life. That's not how you live. That's not how you came in. But now we're here. Mm. So now you're in my world, but you're not all of a sudden going to adopt porn into yours.
Right.
And all that sexual history. So how now do you be in that world, but not of it? What were the characteristics of that to go, hey, I'm in this relationship now. I'm not going to go to where that is because I don't feel that's right. That's a very healthy boundary for my marriage. What did you have to do in that moment?
No, I mean, we definitely had some real hard conversations, and it was, these are non-negotiables for me. This isn't healthy. This isn't something that I'm going to accept. This isn't something that I'm going to be a part of. And so this is a line that's not going to be crossed. And so there were definitely expectations and things that were set in place that we had to have.
You never compromised. And that I will never forget. And I think that literally is how we are in the world and not of it. I can be amidst this. I'm now married to this individual. This is who I believe God gave me. That came in with some baggage. I know where my stance, I know where my convictions are with the Lord. I know what I know God's word says. I mean, at that point, I wasn't even living for the Lord. So it's not even, but you never compromised. And I think how many times we've sat with couples where in a relationship where the biggest tension is either someone has compromised or someone's angry that someone's not compromising.
Yeah, very true.
You know, and you'll find a weaker vessel sometimes, that could be man or female,
Right.
where they find themselves compromising just to keep the peace.
Yeah.
And long term, we know this. Long term, compromising to keep peace is not the answer.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, when you look at couples, whether it's, those addictions or things that you're walking through with your spouse, I think it's okay to take a stand. It's okay to say, these are things that I'm not going to step into. But when you put up those boundaries, we're talking about those boundaries, right? When you put up those boundaries, realizing you're still fighting with, for your spouse. You're fighting with your spouse too during those seasons, let's be real. But you're also fighting for your spouse. You're fighting for our family. You're fighting for our marriage. There were things that I prayerfully wanted us to work through because I wanted it to stop with us. I didn't want it to be a generational thing. And I think everybody has their own struggles. And of course, that's not on us for, the things that our boys walk through, but we can teach, right? We can instruct, we can grow and all of these things. And so when we're talking about those boundaries and setting them and not compromising, it doesn't mean that you're giving up. It doesn't mean, because I think what we see a lot of times when someone has boundaries that they are saying, no, I want you to cross these boundaries with me. Why won't you do this with me? Why won't you take part in this? And you don't have a peace about it. You're asking that person to give a part of themselves. And that's not okay. That's not healthy for either person. So it's beneficial to have those conversations to say, these are the boundaries that I feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And these are hurtful to me. These can't be crossed.
So there's a new exercise that I'm talking to couples about when I coach, because this is a topic of conversation all the time. And taking kind of the stoplight approach, having healthy conversation with your spouse to go, hey, if we took a stoplight approach, red, yellow, green approach in our relationship, what are the things that are green lights? Like, I'm all for, I think this is great. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Where are the yellow areas that I'm not so comfortable with this? Like, we need to do more talking on this. We need to really find out maybe what God's word says on this. Where do we stand in our own convictions of this?
Yeah.
And then red being, hey, this is a non-negotiable that I'm not compromising. This is a boundary that I'm holding fast. And I wonder how many areas in our life would have looked different had you and I kind of taken, like, we haven't even done this exercise because now we're 26 years in. I feel like I pretty much know your red, yellow, greens. You know what I mean? But for some, it's like, I wonder if you really inventory, you may find some things out that, wow, that's a red light for you. I didn't know that.
And there's a difference between conviction and your what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, I just totally lost my train of thought when it comes to the word, like the things you prefer, a preference, like things that you like, and a conviction. Because sometimes we can be like, I don't like this, and so I don't think we should do that. There's a difference in things that are, there's an actual conviction in our right and wrong, and there's a difference in things you just don't prefer.
So can I give a real life example?
Sure. If you keep it PG. Is it PG?
It wasn't PG.
Oh, PG-13?
It's 13, I guess.
Okay. I do have my son in the room, so if you could keep it PG-13 at least.
So, well, no, here's, and I think this is, and I'm just going to shoot it straight with the men real fast.
Okay.
For men, I think on the intimacy or in the sexual things, there's a lot of things that we think should be green lights.
I know.
I'll tell you what, when you agree with me, you definitely agree with me. I do know that.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. But we have these areas that are things. And so for us, just in complete transparency into the world of Kurt and Denette, like, I've always been a fan, and you have not wavered. How many times have I told you, like, hey, girl, why don't you like just fire off some pics to me, like send some pics. Like,
I hate sending pictures. And I know it's not a conviction. I just hate it.
It's definitely a preference.
So that's a preference.
And I'm like, hey, like, why don't you just, I'm here. You're like,
yes, your dad wants me to send pictures sometimes.
So, look, I'm just going to be honest with you. Okay. But here's what I'm telling you. I know that that's a red light.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something that if I don't like that red light and I keep trying to knock down that boundary, what do? I end up undermining trust in a relationship between you and I because I'm trying to get you to compromise on something that I could all of a sudden have this thing fulfilled inside of me
that you don't feel, but your one you love doesn't feel comfortable doing that, and so it's literally making them do something that they almost feel belittled by it. They feel more like a pleasure instead of a treasure. And yes, I know that's like so serious, right? But I know, but it's like I think every woman would rather feel like they were their spouse's treasure and not their pleasure. And yes, you can be both, but I think every woman wants her spouse to look at her and be like, I treasure you so much that I want you to feel loved and cherished and comfortable in all aspects, but especially when it comes to our intimacy, And
that's, I bring that up as just because I think that's, if I, interview 100 men, a lot of those red light, green light conversations are going to be on the intimacy levels. And I think we fight so hard to get our spouses to waver on convictions and to knock down boundaries when the reality is those boundaries could be the very things that are creating safety in our relationship.
And those boundaries, sometimes they are triggering. Because sometimes those boundaries, like for me, because I know your past and I know the struggles that you've had, when, let's just say a picture here or there, even if it's just a cute picture or whatever, for me, it can be triggering. Why? Because that pleasure that was attached to something else in a time. Do you know what I mean? And so sometimes when your spouse pushes back on a boundary, it not necessarily is something that is wrong. It's just something that they don't feel comfortable with because there's a history there, either triggering sometimes in a couple and sometimes triggering from past trauma. We all have our own baggage. I have past trauma from childhood stuff that can be triggering for me. Yeah. And so, those conversations are so important because then your spouse is able to know, why is this triggering for you? Why is that boundary set in stone for you? And it just dives deeper into intimacy because you're able to have those real conversations with, man, that makes me feel like this because of, this experience as a child or whatever.
And, I'm really glad you said that because I don't think as couples, it took us a long time to get to these kind of communication and this kind of vulnerability. And I honestly, it only came because of so much hurt and trauma in our own relationship that I wonder how many times, quite possibly, we don't value the things that trigger past history in our spouse.
Right.
And so where we get upset at these boundaries and we get upset at these limitations, what we see as limitations, when truly our spouse is going, wow, this takes me back. For that, when you're looking at something for you, Kurt, I'm sending you something, you're back on a device looking, and it's me this time, but I remember when it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I remember all the pain and the hurt that it caused and what it near. And man, that's really like, as a spouse now who wants to do everything I can to enhance our relationship, to take us to another level, to lead well.
Yeah.
Those are the conversations that I need to have with you.
Yeah.
Hey, what are the things that I do that do cause pain? And then I've got to care enough to go, I'm going to change myself so that I can honor you in a way that you should be honored. I'm going to die to the things that I want.
Yeah.
So that we together can have the things that we desire.
Yeah, absolutely.
So crazy.
Yeah. So what do you want to challenge the couples with this week?
I would say the practical thing, and I really was getting to the red light, green light, because I think couples should do that.
Yeah.
I would like to challenge couples to go, all right, listen, let's just take a couple areas of our life and look at them.
Mm-hmm.
And where are the things that, hey, let's do this? Where are some things that, hey, can we talk about this? And then possibly where are some boundaries, where are some red light areas in our life that we've never had conversation?
Yeah.
They've been red lights, and those boundaries have created resentment.
And they don't necessarily even have to be just between the two of you. I know, like for us, when we first got married, some of the boundaries that we had to set aside were even like some of the friendships we had, you know, because certain people that were in our life at the time, they weren't the best of friends, you know. So I think that is a very real conversation, especially for young couples to have. Man, when you're with this person, I get uneasy. When, you know, you work all the time, it hurts my heart, you know. So setting those boundaries, it doesn't necessarily even have to be between you as a couple or intimate things, but what are the boundaries that you know, want to ask your spouse for help with when it comes to, man, these things are really impacting our marriage, you know?
And why?
Why?
Yeah. And that's the communication part, the why.
Yeah.
Why are these areas off limits to you? Like, why is this a red? Why do you not like me going to the pool hall with my friends?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, when I was growing up, my dad used to go to the pool hall. Not my dad, but my dad, and he had
Never
affairs
came
on my
home.
mom. And
Yeah.
so every time you go to the pool hall, I think that's potentially where we're headed. Like, you just begin to see the inner workings of your spouse in a way that's different.
Absolutely.
So I challenge you, listen, celebrate some things that you love to do together.
Yeah.
The green lights in your relationship that you know enhance. For you and I, that's going out to eat, that's traveling, that's, man, laughing together. Like, those are the green lights that we love to do. Then where are the ones that the yellow lights that maybe I'm for, but you're not?
Mm-hmm.
You know, send in pics and things like that. Like, that's a red light. But yeah, you know, it's like,
I was like, wait, that got moved to yellow.
well, you know, I was just, you know, we just continue to grow. Yeah.
I gotcha. It's still red.
It's still red. Okay. You know, like, but, and then where are those limits that there's tension, not the things that are easy, right?
Yeah.
Don't, like, man, care enough to go to the tensious area and go, we may have never had this conversation.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about it. And let's talk about it in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
Now, here's the reality, and I'll say this all the time. There's some things in your relationship that when you dive into that, you need a coach in the room.
Yeah.
Like, that's, maybe don't start there. If you don't have communication,
make the space for it. Yeah.
Make the space. Listen, I said every time, I love you.
I love you too.
I'm thankful we get to do this.
Okay, from here we can't even have a kiss. We're too far away from each other, like last week.
Why don't you just send me a pic?
No, I'm good. I'm good. It's still red.
It's still red.
All right.
Okay. Listen, we love y'all. Remember, we say it all the time. If this in any way brings joy to your marriage, enhances your marriage, helps your marriage, go on, like, subscribe. Go to brokenforbetter.com. So into the ministry. We just want to spend the rest of our days creating authentic marriages that breathe life into people.
That's right.
All right?
That's
Listen,
right. Thanks
we'll
for
see you in a
joining.
couple weeks.
2 more weeks.
All right.
Another Breaking Chains. All right.
Love you guys.